A lot of people have been reaching out to me. As OutKick's audience has exploded, a lot of you have been reaching out to me saying, hey, Clay, I agree with you that college football needs to be back, but you are overlooking something that is also wildly popular across most of your listening audience, and that is high school football. And that really got brought home to me yesterday when I was talking about it with Jason Whitlock, obviously off the air, as we were talking about topics and stories that we were going to be working on at OutKick. And in particular, Jason Whitlock, whose column I would encourage you guys to go read at OutKick today, he said to me, hey, Clay, and you need to go read this for yourself, but he was like, man, if this pandemic had hit back in 1984 when I was growing up in Indianapolis, Indiana, living in a 400-square-foot apartment with my dad, I wouldn't have gotten a college scholarship if I hadn't gotten to play my senior year of high school football. That was what got me a scholarship to Ball State. And again, you need to read Jason Whitlock's column, and allowed me to go to college and eventually end up becoming a journalist and having all the success that Jason Whitlock has had in his career. And we've talked about this on the show before. Whitlock credits football with being his pathway into success in life. He used the football scholarship that he got to Ball State to give him an opportunity to later have a great deal of success in his professional life. And we focus a lot, which is natural because all of us are sports fans. We focus a lot on the guys who come out of college football and are stars in the NFL. We give almost all of our attention to them, but they are a tiny percentage of the overall people who play college football. The vast, vast majority of college football, and this is what one of the aspects of the NCAA advertisements that they get correct, they go pro in something other than sports. And so I think we need to be talking more about all of the impacts of shutting down school as it's associated with high school football, because let's be honest, high school football is an extracurricular that gives kids all over the country an amazing lesson in so many different aspects of life. But it's also emblematic of many things that are going to be lost if our kids aren't back in school this fall physically, right? And Whitlock's column dives into something that I don't think gets talked about anywhere near enough, which is how many kids are on free lunch and free breakfast that otherwise literally aren't getting enough food to eat, and their families are out there struggling. And I just keep looking at the data here, and the data is not complicated. The data is in no way confusing about kids being back in school. The data all suggest that kids need to be back in school. And I put up a big article about this on Wednesday at OutKick, and tons of you read it. And Whitlock said that he was listening, and so he was like, hey, I want to write about this, but I want to hit you with the data again. I think high school football needs to happen, all right? And I think that high school football is just one of many reasons why high school and K through 12 education needs to be back this fall in person, right? And we're a sports show, so we talk a lot about the impact of sports. So I'm using high school football as a prism to discuss why kids need to be back in school. But I want to hit you with these facts again because I think so few people actually know them, all right? This is according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and I am reading directly from the Wall Street Journal. 30 kids under the age of 15 have died from COVID-19, all right? I wish that hadn't happened. I wish no kids out there were dying at all. This is not like a complex or difficult question. It's not a Democrat issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's an important factual data point, all right? That is a really, really small number of kids nationwide, 15 and under, who have died, all right? In a typical year, 190 kids die of the flu. So your kid is over 6 times as likely to die of the flu as they are to die of the coronavirus. 436 kids die from suicide. 625 kids are murdered, and 4,114 die from unintentional deaths such as drowning, which is one of the top reasons why young kids die in this country. In other words, if you are a parent right now, your son or daughter is under more danger going to the swimming pool than they are going to school. They are under more danger going to the lake than they are going to school. They are under more danger at the beach than they are at school. The data is all clear. Kids need to be back in school. They need to be getting their food, their breakfast and their lunches. They need to be having in-person instruction. And they need to be playing high school sports, football in particular, which is the most popular by far of all high school sports. Go read Jason Whitlock's column laying out why all of this is so important at OutKick.com, but I just wanted to give you all of that data because I think it's so eye-opening. And so many of you hearing this right now are like, wow, really? 30 kids under age 15 in a typical year have died from COVID-19. That's 1/6 of the number of kids that die from the flu in a typical year. One of the benefits, and there aren't a lot of them, but one of the benefits that we have of the coronavirus is it does not typically impact children. This virus, I mean, if you want to talk about scary, the average person who dies of the coronavirus right now is older than the average person who dies in America every day. In other words, the average age of death of a coronavirus patient is older than the average age of death of people in general. Okay? That stinks. Again, any sort of death is a negative, but we're all, I hate to start off your second hour here on the Friday morning show, but we're all going to die. So far, no one has managed to figure out how to be immortal. Imagine how much more terrifying the coronavirus would be if instead of having this impact on the elderly, which is who it kills overwhelmingly, imagine if it had this impact on young people. Then I would be one of the people saying, I'm never leaving the house. If my 12, 9, and 5-year-olds were under significant danger from the coronavirus, I would have locked down my entire house. I wouldn't be going outside, and I imagine a lot of you other parents would feel the exact same way. But that's not what we have, which is why I believe I'm not saying something to you that's different than the way that I would live my life. I believe my 12, my 9, and my 5-year-old, my 7th grader, my 4th grader, and my kindergartner, they all matter more to me than anything. I believe they all need to be back in school. And by the way, my kids are fortunate in that they have advantages that a lot of other kids don't. And a lot of your kids have advantages too. But if your kids don't have those advantages, in-person schooling is even more important for those kids because the data reflects that in the city that I live in, Nashville, 30% of all public school kids, and I was once a public school kid in Nashville, K through 12, public school kid, went to a city school. I was one of those kids that knew and had to deal with the value of seeing in-person education. We didn't have a computer at home. Now, it's a different era, but I didn't have a computer at home. I never had the internet at home. Different era. They had it. Some people did in my school, but I never had the internet at home. And so now there's still a huge percentage of kids that don't have that. I never had a computer till I was a senior in college. I used a computer lab otherwise. And so there are a lot of kids out there that still don't have access to a computer at home. There are a lot of kids out there that still don't have functional internet or Wi-Fi at home. 30% of kids don't have computers at home. Over 20% don't have functional Wi-Fi. Those kids are all going to fall behind for a very, very long time academically because they can't keep up because they don't have the advantages. And it's like nobody is talking about those kids. Jason Whitlock's column talks about being one of those kids growing up and how much different his life would be if he hadn't been able to go to school. And I think it's a column that everybody needs to read. and we don't need to just be focusing on pro sports and on college sports, even though that's what most people are watching. We need to be thinking about high school sports and how they are being impacted by this pandemic.